Hello everyone, it's Mrs. Wallace. I'm just doing this video in case you were absent in the last few days, so like 3 days ago or 2 days ago or a day ago. Just wanted to give you a little bit of an update. This slideshow coordinates with some of the guided notes that you have been given in class. If you didn't get those notes, then you want to check out the folder on Schoology under the World History class. It's called Materials for Class, and in that folder, you'll see Unit 1 and the guided note sheet is there. It's a doc, so you can use it to type while you're listening to this video, or you can grab the handout from class. It's like a stapled packet, and you can use that and just jot down a few of the notes. And feel free to, kind of go to the part of the video that addresses some of the content that you missed. Rather than doing smaller videos, I'm just doing the first few slides, for everyone who was out in the last few days, but, this might repeat some things that you have already seen. So one of the first things we did as a group was to just talk about periodization. And this is kind of straightforward, but, historians work to develop periods, and they do that to help us out and to be able to tell a story that sometimes is long. The Middle Ages as a time period in Europe tends to be about 1,000 years of time. Okay, so we attach the time in Europe for the Middle Ages from about 500 CE, that stands for Common Era, till about 1550 CE. So that's like a really long period of time, right? It's about 1,000 years. And because it's really hard to get a sense of all of that time and all of the change that's happening in that time, we split up the Middle Ages into periods. And historians might look for ways that there are some similarities in certain parts of the Middle Ages. Maybe the very early part of the Middle Ages, closer to 500, is much more, similar to, the area around the 800s. And of course, the 1550s are going to be so much later. So you might see some very, very different outcomes. So we talked in class a little bit, if you weren't here that day, about some of the pros and cons of historians developing periods. On one hand, it helps us out a lot. It's like a nice frame of reference to just kind of bullet point some of the things that are what happened in the early Middle Ages or what happened in the High Middle Ages and so on. But there's also some challenges because A, it's human constructed. There really may be very little difference, between, say, on Monday, people aren't in the Middle Ages, and then all of a sudden Tuesday they are. Nothing magically is necessarily different, on the Tuesday. It's that change really happens over a long period of time. So sometimes periods give us a sense that, everything that happened in this early period, these are the only things, that happened in that period. And these concepts of categories can sometimes be limiting. So just recognize that. You can also challenge sometimes or, critique some of the actual years that I give you. Different textbooks might define the dates of the Middle Ages a little differently. And if that feels weird to you, it's because historians debate, when did the early Middle Ages begin? When did the, late Middle Ages end? So we look at the early Middle Ages as generally being around 500 to about 1000 CE. Okay, so I'm just going to note that. In terms of the High Middle Ages, we're looking at about, let's say, 1000 to about 1250 or so. And then the late Middle Ages, which is like the very last part of the Middle Ages, maybe 1250 till about 1550. And these become very, very different, time periods. The early Middle Ages in the 500s is really beginning as soon as the Roman Empire is on the decline. So one of the bookends that starts off the Middle Ages is the decline of the Roman Empire. At the same time, at the end of the Middle Ages, the 1550 time period, this is around the time of the, whoa, sorry, I didn't mean to do that. Let me just go out a little bit. Okay, exit that. Sorry about that. My years got mixed up, but the late Middle Ages at the end, the book, the way we could maybe bookend that is the end of the European Renaissance, or the beginning of the European Renaissance kind of follows the Middle Ages. And there's a lot of debate about that. So just kind of note some of those time periods, right? We're interested in chronology. We also looked at a map. One of the things about the beginning part of the Middle Ages is that we have a couple of different influences. One of these influences is the religion of Christianity, which is a fairly new religion at the time of the beginning of the Middle Ages. This is a map that displays before the Middle Ages. This is really the Roman Empire, all of Europe that's in the blue line, right? So you can see not only Europe, parts of Northern Africa, also areas of like the modern day, Turkey and Syria and Israel. These are all of this territory that's in these blue lines would be the Roman Empire somewhere around the year 395. Okay, and it's a massive empire, kind of on the decline by 395, but still we can see a really massive empire. We can also note that in 395, we have the spreading of a new religion, Christianity. And where you see the bright orange dots, that's where Christianity first travels. And by the year 325, those are areas that are largely Christian. And, we talked in class about this, but some of those areas seem to follow some of the trade routes. So port cities, urban centers, areas where there's like higher populations of people, lots and lots of shipping. Some of that would be connected to the beginnings of the spread of Christianity. And transportation routes are going to be a really key part of this. There's other reasons why Christianity spreads. Also, there are followers of Jesus Christ who spread the ideas of Christianity, so people are also behind it. And there are reasons why certain groups of Romans take to Christianity. But the key takeaway for us is that early in the years, say up until the year 10 CE, over the course of that 10 years, we have a very, very kind of fledgling religion that starts out in the area of Judea. So we can see kind of in modern day Israel. And this really stems from a sect within Judaism. So Jesus Christ, who's an historical figure, or still a religious figure and divine in Christianity, a religious figure in other religions as well. But in the time period that we're talking about, Jesus Christ ended up with he was born Jewish, ended up with some followers, in particular groups of Jews who had been interested in talking about the possibility of a Messiah. Some of this becomes more a derivative of Judaism and becomes, followers of Christ, who will then soon to be Christians. The Romans persecute and then will put Jesus Christ to death, and his followers will see a coming from the death to life for Christ, and that ends up being a significant part of Christianity. At first, the religion of Christianity is very, very small, and some of its followers are oppressed and oppressed quite heavily. Sometimes people are practicing in hiding. The state of Rome had a statewide religion that the government also sustained, and the state religion was based on a pantheon of gods and goddesses, and lots of people depended on a relationship with gods and goddesses and visits to the temple to enable their lives on earth to be made more rich. Christianity differs, one, because some of the practices are very different. It is focused on monotheism, so one God rather than a pantheon of gods. And there also is a strong belief in life after death in Christianity, and some in the Roman Empire found this to be incredibly threatening. So in the beginning decades of the Common Era, we see a fledgling Christianity that has followers and has some movement, but it's not really until the 300s where we see significant spread. If you look at the yellow colored areas on this map, you can see where there might be Christianity by 500. So that just gives you an idea of the rapid growth of this. Some of this text includes some of that information. The message of Christianity might have been made attractive to particular groups of people. Some historians make a case for that. By 300, 10% of the Roman Empire is Christian, and this is a group that's persecuted. By 318, there's an edict that allows toleration of Christians. So Christians are allowed to practice in the Roman Empire. And by 380, Christianity actually becomes the state religion. So even though there's like a slow start to the spread of Christianity, it actually moves pretty quickly across the Roman Empire. And when the Roman Empire political system falls, what happens is that Christianity becomes one of the connecting pieces for people and doesn't necessarily fall. So Christianity becomes an important element in the Middle Ages, and we'll see it, when we start to look at the Middle Ages. Another day that we did, and we'll just note this kind of quickly. So if you missed this day, we talked about the extended Roman Empire as a political system in 717 and into the 100 CE. This was a massive, massive empire that was headed out with an emperor, a single emperor in Rome. In some cases, the emperor was even seen to be godlike in the Roman state religion. There's like kind of the cult of the emperor. But there is also this growing land, and it becomes, kind of a bloated empire where it's hard for the emperor and some of the bureaucracy under the emperor to manage all of the lands. Okay, different groups of people who are gobbled up by the Roman Empire become part of the Roman Empire, have availability to become Roman citizens in some cases. There are very strict laws about who is able to become a Roman citizen and how that might work. But there is, in a sense, a lot of maintenance of basic Roman law throughout the empire. The Roman Empire got so big, however, that there are some attempts to try to manage it a little bit better. One of these comes under the Emperor Diocletian, who attempts to split the empire up. And this is where we really see the halves of the empire, the East and the West. The East that will become largely called the Byzantine Empire, and the West, which will be dominated by invasions of Germanic peoples. Okay. One of the things that we also talked about are some of the political and economic outcomes in the last few decades of the Roman Empire, maybe even starting in the late 200s into the 300s. For example, there are some internal political problems, problems just within the Roman Empire. It's too big, resources are stretched, and there's a whole pile of really, really lousy emperors. Political corruption goes unchecked. So those are all political problems. There are economic problems. On the fringes of the empire, there's conflict and war. There's less produced as a result, and tax revenues start to fall. There's inflation. There's also a situation of slavery throughout the Roman Empire. About 30% of the society is enslaved. So there's a bunch of economic problems and a lot of political instability. The military, which had traditionally been strong in the Roman Empire, starts to be weak because of a lack of funds. There's also an effort to try to bring in foreigners known as barbarians, people who are moving into the Roman Empire from Central Asia or from Scandinavia. These various groups of people are coming in and in some cases being hired or being even turned to citizens in some cases. So we have kind of a demographic changes. We also have in the social system lots of things starting to stall, right? Education, a lack of food, hunger in the Roman Empire. Christianity is a big change, so lots and lots of issues. And lastly, at the same time, like the internal government starts to get sick, there's also some barbarian invasions. And if you had missed this, just note barbarians is, a lousy word. It is, often derogatory. The Romans use it to describe foreigners, people who are different than Romans. So they're othering groups of people. And looking down in a lot of cases on the barbarians, we looked at two excerpts in class, two primary sources, written from the perspective of Romans about the barbarians. So check out the barbarian source, and I will see you in class.